Hi everybody, my name is Banjo. I'm a singer-songwriter from Puerto Rico. I'm here in support of the Caravan and the great initiative these folks are taking to help out and to speak out about what's going on with the food. This song is from a group called Fiol a la Vega from Puerto Rico, and it's about believing in ourselves.
Hace ya bastantes años que no se juega por jugar, cambia el guante de pelota por las cartas del azar, y yo que me la pasé esperando por la mayoría de edad pa' que me dejaran salir sola a la calle y cruzar hasta la ciudad y descubrir ese mundo nuevo, edificio por empañetar donde las estrellas se dan en el cine y en el cielo solo hay gas. Y así echamos todo hacia un lado, al familiar y a la amistad, cambiando el suelo de tantos años por un estudio que paga más y trabajando en restaurante de mensajero, de lo que sea, automatizado en una espera por una gran oportunidad, poniendo a de otra gente que fueron antes y más que tú, de limpia mesa que tuvo suerte y que ahora vive conmigo. Soy el que va a estar, soy el que va a hacer yo. Quizás algún día comprendas lo que importa de verdad. Quizás lo que importa en esta vida es algo que no tiene que ver con las cosas que persigo, con todo aquello que soñé, pero algo necesito, por eso tengo que creer. Quizás mi sueño no valga nada, quizás sea algo que me inventé, como un mapa, como una guía, como una excusa que promover. Soñar tiene algo de engañarnos, de ser hoy alguien más que ayer, mal agradeciendo lo que se nos ha dado, pero no importa más saber cómo sería todo al otro lado, que te escucharan solo una vez, que aplaudieran esa osadía, que criticaran la primera vez. Sé que se oye egocentrista, pero lo digo sin maldad, sin nada de esto significara algo. No había un Clemente, no había un Juliano, un poquito más de que estoy hecho. Soy el que va a estar y no soy el que va a hacer yo. Dame un momento para ver que estoy hecho. Soy el que va a estar y no soy el que va a hacer yo. Pero yo quiero que nos entendamos, que nadie se me ponga a dudar de que yo sigo con lo mío, y eso es a como de lugar. Quizás no es el mismo brío, quizás no es misma la intensidad, pero ya pasé la mitad del camino y no pienso regresar. Como las manos vacías con lamentos, como un cuento sin culminar. No quiero irle concediendo otra victoria a esta ciudad.
First of all, I want to thank Sherilyn and Ann for the invitation to play. Dr. Fiol, she brought me, and Marcial, kind of opened my eyes to what was going on in Honduras. I try to help as much as I can. Busy, all the time. Trying to pay my support somehow, and that's why I'm here. This song, it's a very well-known song in Latin America. It's by Silvio Rodriguez. It could be dedicated to a partner that did you wrong, but I also see it as it's a request for tyrannical people in power.
Ojalá que las hojas no te toquen el cuerpo cuando caigan, para que no las puedas convertir en cristal. Ojalá que la lluvia deje de ser milagro que baja por tu cuerpo. Ojalá que la luna pueda salir sin ti. Ojalá que la tierra no te bese los pasos. Ojalá se te acabe la mirada constante, la palabra precisa, la sonrisa perfecta. Ojalá pase algo que te muere de loco, una luz cegadora, un disparo de nieve. Ojalá por lo menos que me lleve la muerte, para no verte tanto, para no verte siempre, en todos los segundos y en todas las visiones. Ojalá que no pueda tocarte ni en canciones. Ojalá que la aurora no dé gritos que caigan en mi espalda. Ojalá que tu nombre se le olvide esta voz. Ojalá las paredes no retengan tu ruido de camino cansado. Ojalá que el deseo se vaya atrás de ti, a tu viejo gobierno de difuntos y flores. Ojalá se te acabe la mirada constante, la palabra precisa, la sonrisa perfecta. Ojalá pase algo que te vole de pronto, una luz cegadora, un disparo de nieve. Ojalá por lo menos que me lleve la muerte, para no verte tanto, para no verte siempre, en todos los segundos, en todas las misiones. Ojalá que no pueda tocarte ni en canciones. Ojalá pase algo que te vole de pronto, una luz cegadora, un disparo de nieve. Ojalá por lo menos que me lleve la muerte, para no verte tanto, para no verte siempre, en todos los segundos y en todas las visiones. Ojalá que no pueda tocarte ni en canciones.
Muchas gracias. This song now, it was put together by Roy Brown. He's a Puerto Rican singer-songwriter. But it was originally written by Juan Antonio Correger, which is the national poet of Puerto Rico. And the thing of this song, I think it's very specific and particular to our situation. Because it's called Boricua en la Luna. And it says, I will be a Boricua, which is Puerto Rican, even if I was born on the moon. So it doesn't matter where I am, it doesn't matter where I was born. I have my culture and the heart of my people with me. And I like to change it in this case. Yo sería borincano, aunque estuviera en la luna. Because, well, I'm not home, but I bring my pride of my people with me everywhere I go.
Desde las ondas del mar, son besos a su orilla. Una mujer de Aguadilla vino a New York a cantar, pero no solo a llorar, un largo llanto y morir. De ese llanto yo nací, como en la lluvia una fiera, y vivo en la larga espera de cobrar lo que perdí. Por un cielo que se hacía más feo, mamá volaba. A Nueva York se acercaba un peón de las Marías. Con la esperanza decía de un largo día volver, pero antes me hizo nacer. Y de tanto trabajar se quedó sin regresar. Reventó en un taller. Y de una lágrima soy hijo, y soy hijo del sudor, y fue el abuelo el amor único en mi recibo. Del recuerdo siempre fijo, en aquel cristal del llanto, como quimera en el canto, y un Puerto Rico de ensueño. Y yo soy puertorriqueño sin nada, pero sin quebranto. Haga la afrenta, pues según alguien me cuenta, dicen que la luna es una, sea del mar o sea montuna. Y así le grito al villano, yo sería borincano aunque estuviera en la luna. Y así le grito al villano, yo sería borincano aunque naciera en la luna.
Muchas gracias. Mi nombre es Dario. Gracias por la invitación. Estoy hablando de un poco fantástico que por favor para que se con su programa.
And this event is coordinated by volunteers for Minnesota Caravan Solidarity. Thank you everyone who's coming to volunteer your time. to volunteer, to learn about what's going on in the world. I know a lot of you are involved in working for justice, working for human rights of all people, and I thank you for showing your commitment today. And I hope this is a good time for us to learn from each other and to renew our spirits. And I want to thank Ivan Fontanes for his beautiful music to remind us. It reminds me why we do this, to connect with people for peace, and I mean all kinds of peace and vitality. So Minnesota Caravan Solidarity, we organize locally to fight for human and civil rights of refugees, asylum seekers, and immigrants. Our work is endorsed by a lot of you and a lot of, just a variety of people who care about people and want to give their time to make change in this country. You notice we started a little bit later than 1 o'clock, and so we're going to just move along as if we started on time, and that's going to be hard because I've got all these little notes that tell me what time it's supposed to be. So if you'll like just help me out a little bit with your patience, that would be really good. All right. Just a couple of housekeeping things. This event is being recorded. It is not being broadcast live, but we'll record it and put it on the Minnesota Caravan Solidarity Facebook page. If you do not want to be recorded, please see the videographer right now. Another thing just really important for folks who don't want to be photographed, a freelance photographer contacted us last night and said he wanted to photograph our rally in March afterwards. And so if you also don't want to be photographed for that, you'll need to let us know, and we'll hook you up with the right people so you can participate without that kind of worry. We have water for everybody after the event. There's not supposed to be food or drinks in here right now, but the water is right over there. Feel free if you get thirsty to take what you need. All right. Yeah. I wanted to comment about bathrooms.
Yeah.
Did you want to say?
So a couple of is this one on?
Yep. Come in.
All right. Here we go.
Couple housekeeping things. Men's room is right out this door over here. The women's restroom, you have to go out the door and through the commons, and it's kind of in that corner. So that's where the restrooms are. Yeah.
I'll just say a little bit about why we're here today, and I want to ask each of you, what were you doing a year ago? Last April, it was a while ago. What were you all doing? Were you listening to the news and hearing about the people that were coming to Mexico and to the United States, starting to walk from Honduras, and thinking, what's going on here? That's when the mass exodus from Honduras and Central American countries began. April was the first of many waves of different caravans, as they call them in Spanish, that are people who are crossing together for safety to come to the United States for another chance at a life without violence. You saw them in the news, like crossing the river, walking across Mexico, hitching rides across Mexico, and arriving at the border. We want to make sure that everybody understands it's not just people thinking they want a better job. We pay attention to a lot of the root causes of why someone would leave their home. Gangs who intimidate and extort and even murder citizens for keeping control over their territories, lack of livable wage jobs, and the wreckage of corrupt governments who not only let crime run rampant, but are even involved in the crime themselves. Most importantly for us today is recognizing that the decades and even hundreds of years of US policy, the aftermath, which has supported these same governments, is causing people to flee. The government, our government, as fostering corporations who end up polluting the water, raping the land, and extracting the natural resources, not just for the people, but to sell it to someone else. And so the people that are left, who are the original inhabitants of the land, don't have what they need to live a sustainable life. Today you're going to learn from people like yourself who have taken a stand against these immoral and illegal acts by corporations, governments, individuals, and learned how to educate themselves and to fight injustice. So this is a great chance to connect with more people, learn, and be engaged, and to create a community and a country who upholds the rights and the humanity of everyone. Thank you.
So our first speaker is from ICOM, which is the Interfaith Coalition on Immigration. I want to welcome Daniel Romero. Daniel is a Minneapolis pastor working with the Interfaith Coalition on Immigration. He has worked with the Minnesota Immigrant Rights Coalition and IMREC, and on issues relating to Israel and Palestine. Daniel has been a community organizer in many parts of the country. Please welcome Daniel Romero.
Is it okay if I have water? Well, thanks for the invitation to come and talk to you. So those two community organizations are the Interfaith Coalition on Immigration, or ICOM, and MIRAC. How many of you know about MIRAC, right? Minnesota Immigrant Rights Action Committee. Several of you are perhaps members or have been affiliated, come to events, those kinds of things. So thanks for this invitation. We'll try to cover immigration and immigrant detention in 10 minutes. We'll see what we can do with that. Let me begin by stating the obvious, and that is around immigration and immigrant detention. And that is, first of all, the issue related to immigration and the problems that all of us are facing, whether we are members of targeted communities or whether we're in the movement of resistance. The primary motivation, the primary foundation around immigration and immigrant detention is that that system is motivated by, propelled by, lifted up by capitalism. If there was no profit motive for this systemic abuse, I wouldn't be here, and several of you wouldn't be giving of your time either. So that's fundamental statement number one. The second thing that I want to mention starting off here is that there is no political will anywhere to do anything about this issue. There is no political will, no political leadership on this issue that has any chance right now of doing anything systemic that will care for, support, lift up the 11 million, approximately 11 million undocumented folks in the country. Now we're going to talk about some local resistance and some resistance around the country as well, but I just wanted to start off with those two kind of fundamental principles. In the United States today, there are about 40,000 immigrant detention center beds, 40,000, in 1,500 facilities, private and public, across the country. 1,500 facilities, 40,000 beds. Now, our president made a very big deal of saying, when he was running for office, that he wants to increase that 40,000 by another 30. and he is on his way to doing that. So none of us should be surprised at what is happening right now, because the president and those who are surrounding him are doing exactly as they claimed they would, both at the border and in the interior of the country. In Minnesota, the Department of Homeland Security has 5 immigrant detention center contracts. Who are they with? 5. Sherburne County, Carver County, Nobles County, Candiota County, and who am I forgetting? Sherburne, Nobles, Candiota, Carver, and Freeborn. There are 5 facilities, 5 county jails that the Department of Homeland Security contracts with in Minnesota right now. On top of that 5 is another 24 cities and counties in Minnesota that have these kind of short-term contracts that essentially collaborate with ICE to be a very temporary holding facility. As immigrants are arrested in rural parts of Minnesota, they'll perhaps be transferred to a local city jail that has a contract with ICE, and then they'll end up in one of those 5 county facilities. There are about 600 immigrant detention center beds in the state of Minnesota right now, in all of those 5 counties put together. Sherburne is the largest. 300 immigrants are in Sherburne County right now, undocumented folks from all over the world. 300 beds. ICE would love to expand in Sherburne County by another 200 or 300 more beds. They put out what's called a request for information a little over a year ago. Sherburne County said, yes, we want to expand. We want more money, right? Because these are contracts with the Department of Homeland Security that pays these counties to provide this service, this systemic abuse. Now, the other important thing to remember about Minnesota is that big building 12 minutes from here, big federal building at Fort Snelling. The Whipple Federal Building at Fort Snelling is a 5-state regional ICE headquarters. North and South Dakota, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota. The Whipple Federal Building, named after an Episcopal bishop. He was the first bishop in Minnesota. Bishop Whipple, coincidentally, happened to be a First Nation advocate. In the mid-1800s, as colonization continued to move eastward or westward, and as the U.S. military pushed First Nation people out, displacing, murdering, jailing, right? You know about the internment camp there, right? So what's interesting to remember about this history is that at the juncture of the Minnesota and the Mississippi River, right? Just right by Fort Snelling, in the middle of that juncture is an island. And if you look on your Google Maps today, that island says Pike Island, named after Colonel Zebulon Pike, an American military officer. But to the Dakota people, whose stolen land all of that is on, and on whose land we stand right now, that island to the Dakotas was called Witatanka, the Big Island. And it just so happens that the Dakota people believe that that's where all of creation began. It then became an internment camp. And now, the Whipple Federal Building sits there. 5-state regional ICE headquarters. Immigration raids are planned there. There's 250 ICE officers are tasked to that building. So anytime you hear about an immigration raid or an immigration arrest in anywhere in this 5-state region, those raids and arrests are planned at Fort Snelling, at that federal building. And 5 days a week, there are hundreds and hundreds of court hearings for undocumented who've been arrested in all parts of the country and who happen right now to be in one of those 5 jails in Minnesota. So, let me back up just a little bit and let's talk about Sherburne County, because we don't have time to talk about all 4 or all 5 county jails. Let me tell you about Sherburne County. 300 immigrants there on a daily basis right now. ICE wants to double that. And county elected officials have said, yes, amen, hallelujah, let's do that. They actually want to create an immigration jail or an immigration courtroom in Sherburne County, just like Whipple, so that the county sheriffs don't have to drive folks from Elk River to Fort Snelling, to the Whipple Federal Building. So there is a group of folks that ICOM has been working with now for about a year, called Sanctuary and Resistance Against Injustice. You'll be hearing a lot more about them. But they have so far done a really nice job of just letting people in the Elk River community know that ICE wants to expand there, and that county officials have said, yes, we want a piece of that, but not one Elk River resident, not one Sherburne County resident was ever asked to vote on that, because the county sheriff, Joel Brott, runs that jail. And that whole system of decision-making is unaccountable to the public. That whole system is unaccountable to the public. So we're mounting a campaign right now to make sure that ICE doesn't expand up there. Just within the last couple of days, ICE has announced its intent to build another immigrant detention center in the middle of Illinois, in Dixon. You can Google that. That just happened just within the last couple of days. But ICE wants to expand here. There's no question about it, because of the federal building and the immigration courts that are there. So what do we do, right? What do we do in the midst of all of this? So there's a couple of things that I want to point out to you. First of all, there are a bunch of groups, not just ICOM and MIRAC, who are really on the front lines of the fight back. And I just want to lift up, my sister Jovita over here from White House, who is really one of the local leaders who are doing a great job in the Twin Cities. This group, along with MIRAC and some other organizations, accomplished some very significant things last year in Minneapolis. You may have heard of municipal ID, right? This is an ID card that City Council passed that would give people who don't have an ID and can't get an ID, whether you are undocumented, whether you are homeless, whether you are LGBTQ, whatever your reason is for not having an ID, we passed a City Council ordinance in Minneapolis that says we're going to be able to get one very soon. And there are several other things that we did last year as well. But right now, there is perhaps no greater campaign, no more important campaign for all of us in Minnesota than the Freedom to Drive campaign. Freedom to Drive campaign. Right, this is driver's licenses for the undocumented. This is a campaign that's been around for many years. This is not the first time it's come up. It just so happens that we have a DFL, controlled House, and we've made some significant progress there, but, to no one's surprise, we've got real problems in the state Senate. But we're working on that, right? And so please connect with the Freedom to Drive campaign. I'll tell you about another campaign that is going to be coming up. You're going to be hearing about it a lot more. And that is making Minnesota a sanctuary state. Making Minnesota a sanctuary state, so that no matter who you are, or where you have come from, or where you are going on your journey, that you'll be safe here, that state resources won't go to enforce federal immigration law. But there are a ton of things going on out there that we don't have time to go into right now. Get engaged with Freedom to Drive. All right, that's the main thing right now, and it's very active right at this moment. The final thing that I want to say is, if you consider yourself a person of faith, right, of whatever faith tradition you might feel connected to, if you consider yourself a person of faith, this issue of standing in solidarity with immigrants and refugees is at the core of every faith tradition that there is. Loving our neighbor, welcoming strangers, not just the Christian tradition, which is my tradition, but the Islamic tradition and the Buddhist tradition and every faith tradition believes in justice. And so I invite you to get to know that part of what this struggle is about as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Daniel. The next speaker is Cooper Christiancy. He's a first-year law student at the University of Minnesota Law School. He traveled to Tijuana, Mexico with a group of Minnesota law student volunteers in January of 2019, just a couple months ago. Thank you, Cooper.
Thank you so much, Sherilyn, and the rest of the Minnesota Caravan Solidarity Group for inviting me here to speak. Like she mentioned, there was a group of Minnesota law students from two of the law schools here in the Twin Cities who went to Tijuana, Mexico to provide legal services to the Caravan members, asylum seekers there. It was a very powerful experience, very emotionally fraught, and so all of us came out of that experience with a want to tell our stories, to kind of bear witness to what had happened there, and to provide you with some, as members of the community, with some context and information about what's going on at our border, specifically in Tijuana. So I wanted to kind of touch on three things really quickly. One, kind of what the caravan seeker, or the asylum seekers that we're seeing in Tijuana look like, what type of barriers they're running up against, and then kind of the human spirit and resilience that was present at the border that I think is very important to highlight. So first, as someone who is from the Midwest and really had no context for what I would be seeing at the border, besides for like the very misguided and misframed media narratives that I was seeing, it was very telling that the vast majority of asylum seekers that we were working with as legal volunteers were families. They were women seeking refuge and asylum for their children and their family members. They were fathers, mothers, daughters, unaccompanied minors who were fleeing violence. The vast majority that we were working with were from the Northern Triangle countries. So Honduras, Guatemala was there, Nicaragua, etc. El Salvador, also a big kind of driver, but there were a whole host of people kind of a part of this struggle for asylum that were also not from the Central American countries. So there were individuals from African nations fleeing war, political persecution, as well as others. And so it was very important for us coming back to be able to talk about the humanity, the trauma that was being experienced at the border. Many people were feeling gender violence, gang violence, political persecution, persecution based off of their membership in a faith group. And so it's very important that as community members, we push back against this narrative of who asylum seekers are. They are not people that we should be afraid of. They are people that we should be welcoming. There are people who have humanity vested inside of them, and we need to respect and give dignity to those people. Very important that we recognize that they have gone through some of the most traumatic experiences. I cannot tell you how many times I looked in the eyes of a mother or a child and wondered how it was possible that they were standing there in front of me after having gone through so much. And so I believe it is the stories of these asylum seekers that we need to be lifting up rather than the jaded and horrible media narratives that are constantly being presented to us. I will also say that it is very important that we understand what the United States government is doing in preventing these people from seeking asylum. There's a metering system taking place, at least there was when I was there in January, that was preventing the number of asylum seekers each day who could apply for asylum. It was not fair, it was arbitrary, about 40 to 100 people a day could apply for asylum. That wasn't even like they were able to get past the first hurdle. That was the first hurdle. They had to wait, sometimes months, in order to begin their asylum process because the United States government apparently did not have resources to process more than 40 to 100 individuals each day. That meant that the majority of people that we were working with had been staying in Tijuana in shelters, sometimes not in shelters, in very dangerous conditions. Just a few weeks before we got to Tijuana, there were 3 unaccompanied minors who were murdered in the city. And we were dealing with some of the fallout from that because it is a very dangerous scenario for all of these people to be in, especially extremely vulnerable people that were the people that are seeking asylum and fleeing violence in their countries of origin. And that's why this Trump administration's new plan to his Remain in Mexico plan is extremely harmful to the prospects of justice for all of the people that are seeking asylum. It means that they will have more difficulty finding legal representation for their asylum claim. Also means that they'll be more at risk of violence as they seek to take refuge in the United States. Before I kind of wrap up, I did want to make sure I ended on saying that I wanted to push back against some of the narrative that we also sometimes fall into here in the United States as we try to help asylum seekers and refugees. I think there's too often a narrative that they are only victims, that they are helpless. And I'm here to tell you that the people that I was speaking with, that I was working with, that people that all of us were working with, were some of the most strong, brave, courageous, and resilient people I have ever seen in my life. They have gone through so much that we will never even be able to understand, but there were strong mothers, courageous people who were willing to fight, who had hope that they could succeed in bringing their families to safety. And it's my personal belief, and I'm sure it is the personal belief of all of you here, that that human dignity should not be ignored, but it should be respected, it should be uplifted, and those people should be able to find safety wherever they go, right? And so I think it's very important for us to all remember that we are dealing with people who are seeking justice, who are seeking safety, and I would challenge anyone to look into the eyes of the children who were there, who were just waiting and hoping to finally be safe, to finally stop in their journeys, and be able to say, no, you cannot seek refuge here. You can't have refuge anywhere you go. And even despite all of that, they still had hope, they were still kids, they still had joy. My favorite story is one of a girl whose number had just been called to go into the United States and to seek her asylum process. And she came back over to one of our legal volunteers who had been kind of playing with her, playing with a lot of the kids throughout their process. And she gave a package of toys and crayons. She says, I'm going now. I won't need them anymore, So I want you to give them to the next kid who comes through, because they're going to need them too. And that experience is what encapsulated all of our experiences. Tijuana, it's a story I'm going to keep with me, and it's a story that we need to start telling about asylum seekers. As they come to the United States and seek to fulfill their journey for justice, we need to be prepared to give them the justice that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Miguel, Fiol, and Sarah Lechner participated in a group of medical staff that also went to Tijuana in January, and they're going to speak to us now. I'll just say that Dr. Miguel Fiol is an organizer for human rights and activist for the sovereignty of Puerto Rico. A neurologist by profession, he organized a local group of medical volunteers who traveled to Tijuana in mid-January to attend to the health of refugees and migrants in the caravans. Sarah Lechner is an activist for human rights. She's a retired child psychiatric nurse, and she is also sponsoring a Central American family as they wait through the uncertain process of seeking asylum here in the United States and Minnesota.
Hola. I was really moved by what you said. I think we felt the same way, that we were coming back, but we had the duty to be the voice for them. And I applaud your sensitivity about that. And Sarah and I were a group of 8 of us from different parts, mostly from the university. And we spent about 4 days there, and saw over 200 patients in the different camps in Tijuana. And we brought about 100 pounds of medical supply, which were very well used, and some of the camps were low on medications. And we saw a lot of people who were sick physically, but we also saw what you saw, a very resilient, wonderful, warm humans that are looking for shelter and companionship and understanding from the United States. The perception is that we're trying to kick them out, and we reassured them by our care that that wasn't the case. We were here as goodwill ambassadors for them, and we came back with wonderful stories too about the people, and we were compelled to come back. So now we plan a second mission for end of May. So we already lined up to go back, the same group, and anybody who's interested in going back with the medical mission, we can use you many different capacities, support team, or just nurses, doctors, anybody. So please see me or Sarah afterwards. I think Sarah had the hardest job. She was doing the mental health piece, and we think there's a big need there. And we're planning our mission to be a little different this time, because once you're there, you know what they need, and then you tailor your needs. So we're thinking of doing some symposia perhaps, or to help the people from the organizations, the NGOs, who are seeing a lot of stress in children, adults. And Sarah worked a lot with the kids, and she had a wonderful touch with everybody. And she can tell you about the mental health situation and how we're going to change our approach.
So again, to echo what you said, even though these people are under tremendous stress, and we did have a lot of people who complained of headaches, other bodily complaints, insomnia, anxiety, it's very well earned, because they face enormous odds, and don't always even know what the process is going to be that they face when they are finally allowed to cross the border. So mostly we were impressed by how resilient the people are, how warm, generous to us. Every shelter that we went to, people would scramble to find us a space to work in, to help us in any way they could help us. And we were there to bear witness to the suffering and to be with them bearing witness. And also, as Dr. Fiol said, to represent all of you. And we went on your behalf as well, to represent that there is much good here. There are many loving people here. When they come, we will welcome them with open arms and reciprocate their generosity to us. So, on a practical level, we want to offer, from our skill set, better ways to cope with the difficulties that they face so that they have more strength to continue the struggle, and to offer, as Dr. Fiol said, to the people who are helping them there, general guidelines in how to create a sense of safety in the midst of all that danger and uncertainty. Things that we've learned from our training and our experience. So it was an honor to be there. And I guess I'd just like to say one thing, a quote that I read yesterday from Rebecca Solnit, and that I aspire to live up to, which is, don't ask what will happen, be what happens.
That's powerful. I want to close here, but before I go, I want to share something with you. I live in the Twin Cities. This is not exactly medical, for about 30 years here or more. And one of my dreams has been all along if we could have a coalition of the Latino groups in the Twin Cities. And my impression over the years has been that there are many groups and they're all wonderful and they all bring a lot, but a lot are fighting fights alone. So I was very happy when Sherry Lane and this coalition came along, gave me a chance to bond with other groups. I'm Puerto Rican, you got the flag here. We've been fighting our Puerto Rican battle, which, as you know, is not easy. We're dealing with the biggest empire in the world, trying to keep our soul, so to speak. So we've been consumed with that, but then as we reach out, I've been wanting to create an ambiance where the Latino groups come together and share issues. They can still be autonomous, each one has individual issues. So we created an organization. I have a brochure I want to pass. It's a Front for Latino Action. We're going to have an organizational meeting. You're all invited to come on April 13th, it's a Saturday. And we've been in contact with several Latino groups in the city, and Asamblea de Derechos Civiles, and there's a Haitian group, another Puerto Rican group. They've been interested. Anybody who's interested in collaborating with this our movement to come together, and it's a dream. It's a dream. Dream away what we can accomplish together. And all Latinos together, I think there's a moment for that has come, especially as we face this issue which touch many countries. Our medical mission was eminently people from different countries. So this, we came together, the people from Mexico, Puerto Rico, United States. So it is possible. So anyway, anybody's interested in this effort, I'll be glad to talk to and come to the meeting. We can just talk about it and see how we move forward. Latinos Unidos, so thank you very much.
much, Miguel, Sarah. I want to take just a moment to say that as you've heard everyone talk about their individual efforts that they're working on, the things that they know a lot about and the things that they don't, to connect with more people, I have an action flyer that we're going to have some in the back and some at the entrance, and we'll pass some out now. If you're wondering what can you do this minute, when you go home, there's lots of things that you can do. Connect up with any one of the organizations that support this work, call your congresspeople about a variety of issues, and we can help you get connected if you're not sure what to do. So we also want to comment that we need your support today to support the activities of the Minnesota Caravan Solidarity. And we're asking anyone who's available. We have a really small group, and all of you may have other priorities, but if you do have a few dollars today to help us pay for the expenses that this event occurred, please do put some money in the basket. We'll use it just directly for the space of this room. On the back of the action flyer is other places that do direct service with refugees, asylum seekers, and other immigrants whom you can support with other philanthropic dollars that you have. You can pass the word along to friends and neighbors. Maybe someone you know doesn't really like meetings, or maybe is a very shy person. They also can give online to a variety of organizations who work directly with the refugees themselves and building an infrastructure of care and support in the United States.
Okay, so moving right along. Our next speaker is Alfreda Daniels. Alfreda is a co-founder of the Black Immigrant Collective and a community organizer with the Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation. She's originally from Liberia, West Africa, where she migrated to the US in 2006 after living in a refugee camp in Ghana for 6 years. In 2015, she organized the Northwest Suburbs Community and Labor Collective, whose mission is to take on working families' issues, build political power, and expand the labor movement. Please welcome Alfreda Daniels.
Okay. Thank you all, and thank you for being here. I'm happy to have been invited here today. Like you said, my name is Alfreda Daniels. I am one of the co-founders of Black Immigrants Collective, and I am a community organizer with the Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation. The Black Immigrant Collective was created about a few years ago. It's actually birthed out of a national organization called Undocky Black. Undocky Black actually is a national organization that focuses primarily on Black immigrant issues. When it comes to immigration issues, a lot of time people actually put our Latinx brothers and sisters on the spot, which may be good and bad sometimes, but also we do have Black immigrants who are going through the same thing. So we decided to come together to be our own voice and to tell our own stories. One thing a lot of people don't know, a lot of statuses and actions that affect primarily Black immigrants are some things that are not usually public or popular amongst the different immigration statuses, correct? And so we came together to actually elevate and amplify the voices of Black immigrants and to let people know this is what we're going through. Besides battling racism because of the color of our skin, we are also undocumented, we are on TPS, some of us are on DACA, some of us are on DED, which you will learn from me here shortly. Currently, right after this, I'm gonna have to leave because we are 7 days away from having over 5,000 Liberians being deported. Is anyone in this room familiar with what DED is? Hand, yes, I was. Okay, great. So DED is Deferred Enforced departure. It's an action, not a status, actually. People who are on DED came from Liberia about 27 years ago, a little bit over, when the war started. The only difference between them and myself, I came as a refugee, they came on that action, actually. It was originally TPS during the Bush administration. That was changed to DED, and that's something that usually gets extended every 18 months. There is no pathway to citizenship, just like other immigration statuses. Last year, this current administration decided to end DED, stating that Liberia is safe for people to go back home. Unfortunately, I go to Liberia every year 2 to 3 times. I teach there. Liberia is not safe. If I'm in Liberia and get a headache, I'm coming right back because the healthcare system is horrible. I've had friends who went back to visit and have died, actually, because of something as simple as a headache or something, because of the healthcare system there. Now you're talking about people who have been here for 27 years. Some of them are children who came here as young as 6 months old and know only the system in the US, asking them to go back to a country they have no idea what it looks like or what to expect, right? So this is home. We've been fighting. He ended it last year, gave people 12 months to leave. That 12 months ends within 7 days. So within 7 days, those over 5,000 people are going to be undocumented. And they have to go back to a country they have never been to. So that's another issue. Besides that, we also have a huge community of undocumented people within the Black community. We have recently worked together with our Latinx brothers and sisters, and we said enough is enough because we have been giving politicians excuse, right, to play politics when it comes to immigration, right? So we finally came together and we formed a multiracial immigration table, and we are all working together for driver license in Minnesota. So that's one great success. However, whatever you have to do today, please, if you can call your representative on behalf of DED holders, I don't know what else can be done right now, but at least just make that extra move and talk to them, let them know that immigration is just not just an immigrant issue. If you're here, if you're a worker, if you have ever worked before in your life, the immigration policy is a labor issue. These people are workers, they're students, so the people that take care of you when you retire, right? That's a labor issue. We were just at St. Therese group home a few days ago in New Hope. And St. Therese were worried because there's a shortage in healthcare workers. And they have over 170 DED holders who work just in that building. And those people by the 30th of this month have to be off the schedule. They can't work anymore. And they're still looking for workers, even with them on schedule. So that's going to be a issue. Who's going to take care of your family or yourself when you find yourself in that position? These are the people that actually help to take care of you. So let them know. As labor movement, we know that immigration is not just an immigration issue, it's a labor issue. And we are taking that very seriously. These are our workers, so we are going to protect them. That's what we represent. We represent the entire worker. It's not just a paycheck, but it's who they are. And we know that the war against immigrants is the war against the labor movement. So we're going to continue to fight. Thank you all.
Jovita Francisco Morales. She is an organizer and indigenous woman of the Masawa people in Mexico. She is one of the fighters, as was said earlier, leading the Minnesota Immigrant Movement and the Driver's Licenses for All campaign at the Capitol this year with all the folks that are working very hard. She's also the co-host of the KFAI radio show, La Voz del Pueblo, The People's Voice, which airs locally on Sundays at 11 a.m., 90.1 FM in Minneapolis and 106.7 in St. Paul. Please tune in and hear all about the people's issues. Jovita.
Hola a todos, is it tarde días? What time is it? Tarde, buenas tardes. My name is Jovita, and as Shirley mentioned, I'm from Mexico, from they call San Francisco del Rio. That's the name of the city, that small town that I used to live in Mexico for 15 years. In Mexico with my parents. My mom and my grandmother speaks Masawa. They don't speak well Spanish, but they understand really well. And then I came to United States in 1995. I came with my family, like my sister and niece and my aunt, mi tia. And then we came in 1995 because in 2000, I think it will be 93 or 90 something like that. NAFTA happened in Mexico, where a lot of company went in my town, and they built a lot of factories. I used to work on them when my 12 years old, was doing sewing, clothing in those machines. And I remember that they was contaminating the land over there, and it's a little bit tough because my parents couldn't continue to cultivate their own farm and all the corns that they used to work over there. Not many of them was harvesting that they used to have before. So that was one of the reasons that made me to come at different places. I didn't know that I was coming over here, but my uncle and aunt says that we should go a different place to work and have make some money and bring money at home and make a house for my parents. That was one of the reasons that we came. And I thought we was going to Mexico City, but realized that it's a different world where it was snowing at that time in January when I came here. When I came here, I was 15 years old, and then I started to work. And then realizing that we need state ID, we need Social Security number to work. And for people who have experiences, they was just teaching us how to do it. We didn't know it was right or not, but that was the situation in that time. And then I get involved in women's rights. I was in domestic violence on those time with other women, and so we started to have more information. And then I began to Wade House Community Center as a volunteer. I was practicing my English in that time years ago with having 2 kids in that time. And then we, as a women, me and another women, we was hunger to demand more training for us and do something for our community or based on our needs. And then we decide to tell the director. The director came an idea to bring other women leaders in the community to help us to develop a curriculum. And that's the time when we decide to, we tell those women leaders to develop our curriculum about leadership. That's how we become to develop Mujeres en Liderazgo in 2008. 2008 began a training for Mujeres en Liderazgo, where we was, me and my other colega Maria Cisneros, we was working on that time already, and then because we wanted to develop our own leadership, and we saw Maria that she was the person who used to be in Latinas Creativas, and we became with Latinas Creativas before Mujeres en Liderazgo, and then we decided like she wanted to take that role to facilitate and coordinate the leadership training, and then and then we say, well, Jovita can be part of the Mujeres en Liderazgo training, so you can see how that works, and then to the other next training we can make it more better. So that's how I become, and then we didn't know that we was developing actions and community actions, and that's how we built the idea to come and submit and work on the legislature with the driver license campaign. Because in that time, in 2007, my kids was involved in the 35W bridge when the bridge collapsed, and that's how I was like having challenge. My other women compañeras was having the same challenge, not having driving because of the domestic violence. It's really hard when you depend on your husband, but you cannot drive because you don't have a driver license, but at the same time, you don't know what to go. So we decided we should have a car, we can drive, we can do all our stuff, so that way we don't have to depend on other person or second person. And that's how we become. We was, me and Anna, we was doing, so, you know, we're gonna tell everybody that we want a driver license, the issue. So, and then after we finish the training, we select a mesa colectiva. So it's a colectiva table where the women finish the training, go to the mesa colectiva where we should work on the campaign. That's where I started to lead the driver license campaign and mobilize the community. We was going different churches, different places to let people know about the issue that we was facing, and that we was tired to be in the dark, and we should say like we are here and we are driving without driver license, but now we want to we want to take the test, we want to do this and this and that, follow through the rule, the law, but we didn't have that in that time. So our first introduced bill was in 2010. That was the first time when we introduced our bill. It didn't pass because we didn't have no vote, nothing about, and the legislators didn't know about the issues, and we just have a hearing committee, but we didn't vote because of the vote that we didn't have. And then in 2011, we end with a group of women. Because in the organization request for 3 years funds. I don't even know how that works, but there was in 2011 they didn't have more money to fund the Mujeres en Liderazgo training, but we was continue doing the Mesa Colectiva as a volunteer to do this work, but many of the mujeres didn't continue because of the training, but also because they didn't have much time to do or focus on that, because it takes time, and especially when you are a woman and have a lot of barriers in your life. They didn't continue, and because I was still working there, I was continuing and going to different places also to invite more people, organization to listen to our issues and make organization to keep their own agenda so they can adopt it, and when election when the session time come, they will try to help us to meet the bill again. And then 2012, I worked with Mariano Espinosa from the city of Minneapolis. He helped us to do a Latinos agenda. We called every Latinos with the hope that we should work together and make an agenda for the Latinos, and then it didn't work. Not everyone, because it's hard because everyone has their own agenda, and which is good, but we just thought it should be good. But we continue. The city of Minneapolis adopt our agenda as a Latino agenda, where we included immigration reform, the DREAM Act that we passed in 2013, and then we have the driver license campaign, and then in 2012 we started to mobilize people in the community. We get involved in the election times because the governor didn't want to support the driver license in that time, and we was behind him every time where he was at the events. We was there. If he went to different places around the cities, we was there behind and just keeping and telling him that driver license it was important for us as a woman, but for not only for women, but for men, for families, because they was driving without driver license. And then that's how we become. In 2013, we submit the bill, I guess, in 2012, I don't remember now. And then we passed it in the Senate. We passed the driver license in the Senate. In the House, we didn't pass it, we was almost. And then we passed the DREAM Act. It's the state tuition that every DACA or young children who came here since babies, and they was wanted to continue to college but didn't have the opportunity to apply in the college or pay same tuition. So that's what we passed with Senator Papas in the Senate, and then in the House with the different authors, right? So in 2013 we passed, and then 2014, 15 we didn't pass it, and that's, we mobilized, we make a lot of hunger strike. For 70 days, people who was doing hunger strike, there was closed door with governor talking about this issue. We make him change his mind to support, and then, but we didn't have politician at that time as a Democrat. So there is a 3 phases that I see that we have. Democrats where they was dominating both camera and they didn't pass it, and then the second one, we didn't have in the House the majority Democrats, but we have it in the Senate. And then after that we have Republican dominated, which we didn't pass it. And then now we have passed that in the Senate we don't have the votes. We have the majority Republican dominated in the Senate, and then in the House we have the votes. We're gonna pass it for sure. We already passed 5 committees in the House. We are just waiting for the floor hearing, and that will be in the House. But in the Senate, we stopped. We have been asking a hearing on the Senate, but we don't have any chance right now. But we're still working on it. It's not an end, but we're still working to have a chance of a hearing. Otherwise, we have other strategy that we can go to in order to win this campaign. But we think that this is the time. We've been fighting since 2008 until now, and I think the new authorship, which is Winkler, he said that he will help us to win, and we trust him, we believe him that he will help us to win this year. But I think that's all the call action that I would say. That there is a lot of events that is coming up. I know that there is different organizations that under the coalition that we have this year with the new name. In the past we used to have the Save Road Coalition, and now we changed the name. It's a different facets, but now it's the Freedom to Drive, which is component by different organizations, which is good because now they are taking their own issue and help us to win this, which is amazing. I want to thank you to all of them to supporting this issue. What can I say? Call action is just call your senators, especially for the Republicans, especially Gazelka, to open his heart and support this issue, because it's not about immigration, it's about safety issue in the street. We wanted to make sure that every people who drive in the street, they know the rule and make sure that they taking the test. That's all we want. Thank you for, and then on April 4th, the Minnesota Immigrant Movement, we're gonna have a event. We're gonna be visiting the Capitol. We're gonna meet there at 9:30 and then continue to visit in the Senate. We have to pressure to the Senate. Thank you.
Autumn Lake, she's an activist that leads protests against U.S. intervention in Venezuela, the U.S. border wall, and U.S. aid to Israel. Autumn represents the Anti-War Committee in Minnesota Caravan Solidarity and is a military veteran who has committed herself to organizing against U.S. imperialism and militarism. Autumn.
Let me just get situated here real quick. Can everyone hear me okay? Excellent. The Trump administration and the politicians and pundits that align with it have been trying to convince the people living in the United States that there is an immigration crisis. They've been trying to convince us that it is a crisis of criminals, of drugs, and of national security. We, in the progressive people's movements, understand that this is an outright lie. Absolutely, there is a crisis, but it is not a crisis of national security. The asylum seekers from Honduras represent a crisis of human need, of families seeking safety and stability, of innocent people fleeing violence and repression. Just as heinous as these lies put forward by the right is their admission of one truth, that the conditions that the refugees are fleeing were created or intensified by United States imperialism, not just mere militarism, but active measures to shape the political and economic infrastructure of its victim nations in service of big business in the United States. In 1904, President Theodore Roosevelt declared that the United States had the right to exercise, quote, international police power in Latin America. Only 7 years later, in 1911, the United States intervened in Honduras. Honduran President Miguel was ousted in a US-aided coup that restored the previously deposed Manuel Bonilla to power. Not only was this coup aided by American entrepreneurs, the policies implemented by this US-backed president granted US corporate interests access to Honduran natural resources and over 1 million acres of land in just a few short years. The exploitative relationship that put Honduran resources into the hands of US capitalists was frequently ensured through the deployment of US military forces. Anyone who has a passing familiarity with Latin American history will notice that this sounds strangely familiar. This is not a coincidence. In 1909, the United States ousted Nicaraguan President Jose Santos Zelaya, who had proposed that American mining and fruit companies begin the so heinous task of paying taxes. And the United States installed a US-friendly president in his place. In 1920, the US sent armed forces to Guatemala to ensure that their new president was friendly to US corporate interests. In that same decade, oil was discovered in Venezuela. Tell me if this sounds familiar. Leading the infamous Standard Oil Company to descend upon the nation and nearly monopolize Venezuela's exports. These events marked only the beginnings of US interference in Latin America, and US imperialism has ravaged the region ever since. Standing out among the actions the United States has taken in Latin America are its responses to people's democratic movements in the region. Anytime that the people of a nation decide to chart their own destiny and determine their own, have control over their economic and political processes and ensure that working people have their needs met, the United States has used any means available to crush these movements. The simple fact is that freedom, democracy, and fairness in a Latin American country causes a reduction in profits and power for US corporate interests and the US's ruling class. This is something that the US cannot allow. We've seen this repeatedly since Roosevelt's 1904 declaration. 1973, the CIA aids Augusto Pinochet in overthrowing the democratically elected Salvador Allende in Chile to shift the country from a people's democratic government that promised healthcare and education to a brutal and repressive dictatorship. 1979 to 1990, the US backs the Contra right-wing rebels in Nicaragua in their effort to dismantle the Democratic People's Sandinista government in a bloody civil war. 1980 to 1992, the US gives military assistance to the military dictatorship in El Salvador in their efforts to crush the People's Democratic Movement in the country. The US-backed government forces were responsible for 70,000 civilian deaths in El Salvador alone. Given this history of bloodshed and repression, it comes as no surprise that the crisis facing refugees from Honduras was also caused by US imperialism. The United States has taken every measure to ensure that Honduras remains subservient to US corporate interests and maintains an anti-worker, neoliberal economic model. Finally, in 2006, the people of Honduras were able to elect Manuel Zelaya as president. He pursued progressive policies that benefited the working and marginalized people of Honduras, including increasing the minimum wage and standing with ALBA against the US's free trade agenda in the region. This election represented the fact that the people of Honduras were charting their own path and determining their own destiny. We've established that this is anathema to the United States' interests. As surely as the will of the people was crushed with the aid of the US in Nicaragua, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Chile, so too did that fate befall Honduras. In 2009, President Zelaya was exiled in a military coup led by Honduran General Romero Vasquez Velasquez. The Honduran forces and Colombian mercenaries that were involved in the coup received training at the School of the Americas, right here in the United States. The same training in counterinsurgency and repressive military tactics that have been given to repressive forces all across Latin America. As always, the US's involvement and enabling of these horrific events was justified by the false claim that the US sought to, quote, restore democracy, with Hillary Clinton's State Department leading the charge and enabling this coup. The conditions that our brothers and sisters in the caravan have fled, the violence, the poverty, the use of rape as a means of political repression, were caused directly by US imperialism. The US ruined the lives of ordinary Hondurans and now denies them the right to seek safety and stability within these borders. The focal point of imperialist intervention in Latin America has since shifted since 2009. The United States has been attempting to undermine the People's Democratic Revolution in Venezuela since it took power in 1998 and has intensified this effort in recent months. With Trump's recognition of the reactionary Juan Guaido as the interim president of Venezuela, the imposition of additional economic sanctions, material support for the political opposition, and a coordinated attack that left the country without electrical power for nearly a week. Imperialist intervention of this magnitude is not just limited to Latin America. This fate is familiar to all countries that found themselves the victim of US foreign policy. It's familiar to Somalia. It's familiar to Haiti. It's familiar to Libya, Cuba, the Philippines, Korea, Iraq. We've demonstrated that not only does the US not care for people's democracies, it actively aids repressive forces in their efforts to crush indigenous people and progressive movements. No regime on earth embodies this more than the Israeli apartheid regime. Israel receives more US military aid than any country on the planet. Aid which is then used to brutally repress, disenfranchise, and kill the Palestinian people. Next Saturday, March 30th, is Land Day, the day of commemoration of an act of collective Palestinian national resistance that was met with the full force of the Israeli repressive apparatus. We should all remember that our cause of anti-imperialism extends to the struggle of the Palestinian people as well. The movement for the rights of immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers is by necessity a struggle against US imperialism. I ask you all today to continue to stand in solidarity with victims of imperialism worldwide. The fate that befell our migrant brothers and sisters from Honduras is a constant threat to people all over the world. Jose Maria Cizon, a leader in the People's Democratic Movement in the Philippines, stated in an interview that, quote, the US was using all kinds of military force in order to beat the Vietnamese people. But they cannot succeed because the self-reliant struggle of the Vietnamese people was supported and augmented by the anti-imperialist and democratic mass movement here in the United States. The fight does not end here today. We have a responsibility to keep hitting the streets and build the immigrant rights and anti-imperialist movements. US out of Latin America, no war in Venezuela, free Palestine, hands off Honduras.
Thank you, Autumn, for giving us that historical perspective and putting it all in kind of context. The other context that we're going to put it into is the context of race. And we're going to invite Mel Reeves to come up, and this will be our final speaker. We really appreciate all of you coming here on such a beautiful, beautiful day, our first really warm day of the spring, and I know that it's quite a commitment to be here, so we appreciate you all being here. I'm going to invite Brother Mel up. Mel Reeves is a longtime political and human rights activist, journalist, and commentary writer. He's an editor, an organizer. His column, Miscellaneous, is regularly published in the Minnesota Spokesman Recorder. His blog, Fight the Power Journal, provides essential commentary on the issues that we face. Please welcome Mel Reeves.
Good afternoon. I'm going to try not to be long. I'm only supposed to go 10 minutes anyway, but I'm going to try to go shorter than that because you all have been sitting here for a long time. And most of us kind of know the things, I think, that have been said already. I really appreciate Autumn's talk because she put it in a historical perspective. And we really need to be able to understand why we are where we are. You really have to get a grasp of history. And I think it's one of the strengths that the folks in power have over us, that we don't know. We make a lot of assumptions about what goes on and a lot of assumptions about the world that we live in that a lot of times are misplaced and are just absolutely wrong. And the only way you move forward is by seeing things as they really are, not as you wish them to be or hope them to be, but as you see them. And that way we can kind of push forward a vision for how we want to see things. So I'm going to throw out a few things and get out and make the point that, as she pointed out, you know, U.S. imperialism is playing a role in this thing, but also we have this enduring legacy of white supremacy, and the two kind of roll hand in hand. In fact, history demonstrates that the U.S. has an immigration dark side, a mean-spirited anti-immigrant impulse that sporadically grips the nation, particularly during times of stress. During these times, the U.S. immigration laws have been harsh, discriminatory, and aggressively enforced. Another way of putting this is the history of the legal and social regulation of immigration to the U.S. has been one of persistent discrimination, white supremacy, and overt racism. Each immigrant group that has succeeded in assimilation or integration in becoming American has done so by becoming white or constructively white. Those seen as white continue to suffer, those seen as non-white rather, continue to suffer a form of second-class citizenship. So to really get a glimpse of what that means, that's actually ensconced in our history. I'm going to walk through a little history. In 1790, the Naturalization Act of 1790, Congress passed this legal deal, which recognized only free white persons of good moral character as eligible for naturalization. Now this is important because this is what's written in history. I mean, this was an act by the U.S. Congress. This wasn't just a thought, oh, maybe people are racist, maybe white supremacy is part of it. They ensconced it in the law. Until 1868, pretty much, it was a coin toss as to who could become a citizen. You had to be white for sure, and I don't know who determined who had good moral character, but so that meant that only even so many white folks could be citizens. It wasn't until after the freeing of the slaves, after the Civil War in 1865, 1868, with the passing of the 14th Amendment. You all know what the 14th Amendment is, right? It's very important because a lot of folks wouldn't have been citizens without it. And so it was one of the more progressive citizenship laws, but it was not applied to everybody. Later on, as more and more citizens immigrated, more and more people immigrated from the rest of the world, primarily the Asian countries and what have you, the U.S. said, you know, with its formation as a white society, said enough of that. And in 1882, they actually passed an act called the Chinese Exclusion Act. That needs no explanation, right? That's a history of this country. In fact, that was what the legislative branch did. The judicial branch kind of reaffirmed it. The Supreme Court accepted as legitimate its racist motivation. And Che Chang-ping versus the U.S., the Congress, they passed the Chinese Exclusion Act in response to the fact that Chinese immigration to California was in numbers approaching the character of an Oriental invasion and was a menace to our civilization. I'm quoting the Supreme Court appeal. The court further observed that the Chinese remained strangers to the land, residing apart by themselves and adhering to the customs and usages of their own country, and that it seemed impossible for them to assimilate with our people. So much for a melting pot, right? And then in 1924, they passed something called the Emergency Quota Act of 1924, and that's used the 1890 census to further restrict immigration to 2%, greatly reducing immigration to the U.S. Although the most vocal advocates supported these acts as a way to limit immigration from Eastern and Southern Europe, the quotas effectively eliminated immigration from Asia entirely. According to an official House report, this is the legislative branch, the quota system is used in an effort to preserve, as nearly as possible, the racial status quo in the United States. It is hoped to guarantee, as best as we can at this late date, racial homogeneity. And that was an act passed by the U.S. Congress. It's also important to note that the first individuals of Mexican ancestry to reside in the U.S. did not arrive as immigrants, which is not true, but rather remained in the country after the Treaty of Guadalupe and Hidalgo transferred vast territories from Mexico to the U.S. So beginning in the 1820s, European and American immigrants settled in Texas, then still part of Mexico, which led the U.S. to annex Texas in 1845. So when you look through the history of U.S. immigration, you'll see that, or U.S. immigration policy, you see that it's inherently racist. That's not us, sloganeering or making stuff up. It's a fact. And we've come to these days, in fact, all throughout the history, I saw recently a documentary on the St. Louis. Anybody know what that's about? The boat that they shipped to St. Louis? Anybody remember the ship to St. Louis? You know what's significant about it? Well, there's a ship called the St. Louis that in 1939 sailed to U.S. from Nazi Germany. Now, in 1939, anti-Jewish feelings and anti-Jewish laws were in full effect. It wasn't like 1930, 1920, 1933 when Hitler first came about. In 1939, everybody knew what was going on in Nazi Germany. And so boatload of refugees escaped Nazi Germany and they came to the U.S. And how many people think the U.S. let them in? I don't see any hands, so you understand what's going on. They didn't let the Jewish folks in. Well, right now, our congressperson, Ilhan Omar, has been, just dragged, so to speak, because she said some things that pretty much were critical of Israel, and they tried to make it appear that it was anti-Semitic. The irony of that is the U.S. government has been anti-Semitic. Right? It's been anti-anybody that's white. So it's ironic that they would jump on Ilhan for saying something or trying to actually misquote what she's saying. So this country, this government on some level has been a country of and for white folks. I mean, if we want to put it bluntly. And so in conclusion, we have to talk about this thing. We have to talk about this policy being what it is. I say to people all the time, when you look at the caravan, we have to be honest with each other. If that was a caravan of Norwegians, we would be having this conversation. Right? And it's the reality of the world we live in. This country is hostile to black and brown folks. In fact, in preparing this talk, I looked at the history of even policing, and you realize the history of policing is racist. That's right. In fact, a professor reached out to our community, the university reached out to our community. They want to interview young people about, their opinions about police and what have you. And the bottom line is, look at, everybody's making money off it. It's kind of an industry in some level because people want to tell the truth. The policing industry exists to keep this system in place. They exist to reinforce the prejudices and the stereotypes in this system, period. All right? When people ask about reform, the police are not going to be reformed. There's no way to reform an organization that has a certain purpose unless you reform that purpose. You see, you're kind of beating your head up against the wall. They exist. The reason that they stop people in my neighborhood is because they're black. The reason that ICE stops people who are brown is because they're brown. Not necessarily because they're immigrants, because if you notice, ICE isn't going in parts of communities that are historically Irish or historically Italian, right, and looking for Italian immigrants or Irish immigrants. They're not doing it, right? We got to look this thing up. They're looking for brown people. They're looking for black people. They're looking for Spanish speakers. Why? Because this is the nation that's formed for white people. And so how do we change this? What do? We actually start talking about the things that, we actually make the propaganda real. We have to, and I heard a young lady talking earlier about having confidence in that the senator may hear. Well, we've tried that a lot. But ultimately, and it's what I think Autumn was getting at, ultimately, if we want to really have a just and humane immigration policy, speaking of, you gotta admit that this policy is inhumane. It's uncivilized. Who the hell puts human beings in cages? Who the hell separates children? I mean, this room should be full. We should be outraged as a country, right? We really should. I mean, this should be the tip of the iceberg. This should be where we say enough. Absolutely enough. I mean, separating children, who the hell does that? Now, what's interesting about the separated children, too, was this woman, Kirsten. I think that's a great name, actually. That's an odd name for her to have, doing the work she's doing. she actually gave as a justification for what they're doing the fact that they lock up black people. That's pretty much who's been locked up. They said, well, we separate people from their families anyway. Think about how deep that is. Yeah, she said, we separate families. What's the big deal? She literally said that. Don't take my word for it. Go look it up. She said, we do that anyway. We separate children from their families. That's what we do. And that's what she's used as justification. One anti-black policy, she's used just as justification for an anti-brown policy. You see how this works? And so we've got to reclaim our humanity. I'm glad we're here because at least we can say we were opposed to it when history writes the story. Because it's not going to be very pretty. There's going to be a whole country set back and allow people to be treated like less than human beings, right? I mean, it's almost as if those folks aren't human beings. And they just might not be, according to U.S. policy. And so, ultimately, we are going to have to change it. We can't continue to talk about reform when these people have clearly made it clear to us that reform is not on their agenda, and they're not going to change. Ultimately, if we want to change immigration policy, if we want to stop being embarrassed about our government that treats human beings who are seeking asylum because of poverty or political oppression, then we've got to change the system. We're going to have to change this system, the social, economic, political system that has as a part of its feature white supremacy. The only way we're going to end the policy is if we change that system. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mel. On that rousing note, we're going to end this information session, this connection session and learning, and meet out in front of South High School's doors here at the south of South High School. I have a few things to say first. Before we go out, let me back up just a little bit. So our next part of the agenda will be to meet at the south entrance of South High School and take a photo of all of us with our banners showing that we were present and we oppose these policies. And we will march from there to Lake and Hiawatha, again, to raise these issues that we don't believe in them and we're gonna stop them. We need 7 volunteers for sure, 5, 1 for each of the flags here, 3 Central American countries, Mexico and the United States. We're gonna change that system, and 2 volunteers here for the sign here to start at the beginning of the march. We have a band that's gonna come to join us. Unlawful Assembly is their name. They're super awesome.
When we go out to come up to the march, they want to take a picture with us. They want to be like in front of us or back of us and prominently displayed. So we're going to form up right outside of the door and wait until Sherilyn's done. All right.
Thank you. Ken is one of our leaders of the march. Before I close, I'll finish with these final announcements. Tonight, the Minnesota Immigrant Rights Action Committee is hosting a party to raise funds for members to join a U.S.-Mexico border delegation. There is no fee to enter. It is at 6 o'clock at 4200 Cedar, and they're just looking for some financial support to continue the learning process of their members about what's actually happening at the border. I just want to say a few words from a friend of mine as we close. He couldn't be here today. He was asked to be a speaker, but he was told by his lawyers that it's not a good thing for his asylum case that he comes and speaks openly in public and talks about these issues, and he's definitely seeking asylum in the United States after 25 years of being here. He's in a very serious situation. This is what he wrote me as he apologized profusely for not being able to come. He's a professor of English literature and post-colonial literature, and you can tell in what he wrote. There's an explosion of xenophobic movements across the world, as we all know, and they are all in one way or another reactions to migrations of people. We're caught in this historic web, and I think it behooves all of us to try and understand its effects on the course of human relationships in general. In other words, immigration is a major flashpoint in worrying growth of tolerance for ideologies that the world has learned to despise, or at least to subordinate to more humane and socially inclusive liberal approaches. Authoritarianism and other kinds of historically shunned political stances have become, for some, the sole guarantors of future security. So I hope you all learned something today, made a connection with new people, built your stamina for the fight ahead. Please meet out in front of the South High School. 2 people to carry the banners, 5 people to carry the flags, and we'll say our piece. Thank you all for coming. We'll see you there.